take a look at what God actually said to them. Here's a passage I want you to actually look at. Genesis 26, verses 2 through 5. This is God's words to Isaac. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and will give them all these lands. And through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed. My requirements, my commands, my decrees, and my laws." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. There's a line there in verse 3. Just take a look at it. If you mark your Bibles, underline it. He says, "And will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham." God says, I'm going to do this stuff because I promised Abraham. Okay, go on to the next passage. It's verse 24 and 25, same chapter. That night the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." Not because anything Isaac had done, but because of Abraham. Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Okay. What about God's words to Jacob? Look at Genesis 28, verses 10 through 17. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." The line in verse 15 is profound, where God said, "I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I'll bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I've promised you." I call these kids the Promiseboys. Their superpower is not that they were good. Their superpower is not that they were extraordinarily faithful. Their superpower is not that they could scheme people out of things. Isaac and Jacob had no superpower of faith on their own. Instead, they were simply the Promiseboys. They were the kids who were part of this promise that God had given to Abraham. And so God made a promise to Abraham, and if Isaac is Abraham's son of the promise, then Isaac is the recipient of that promise. And if Jacob is the recipient of the promise from Isaac, then Jacob gets all of the promised blessings from God. You see how this works? It has nothing to do with how good Isaac was or how he performed. It has nothing to do with how good Jacob was or how he performed. It has everything to do with the fact that God made a promise to Abraham, and when God makes a promise, he does not leave until he's done it. He does not leave until he's done it. So if you're taking notes, here's the blank to fill in. These guys had success, and it was because of the fact that God renewed and they received the promise given to Abraham. So I want to try to draw this together and give you something practical you can take home and use this week. And here's another phrase just to sort of pull it all together for you. It goes like this: God's promises overshadow human performance. God's promises overshadow human performance. See, we like to perform. Jacob liked to perform. He schemed. He did everything he could to try to get the performance bit right. Get the right woman. Get the right flocks. Figure out the right way to convince his brother to love him. Isaac was the same kind of way, but Isaac wasn't trying to perform as much as he was just liking the other people who performed the way he wanted them to perform and not liking the other people who didn't perform. He liked Esau, he didn't like Jacob, because Esau performed the way Isaac wanted him to perform. Jacob didn't perform that way. So here you go. I'm going to tell you how to be dysfunctional in your families. Each week I take it upon myself to teach you a little bit of how to be dysfunctional. And so here you go. This is number one, how to be dysfunctional. Favor other people based on their performance. Particularly if you're a father or mother. Favor your children based on which one is doing the better job right now. Based on their performance. You have one kid who gets A's, love them. You have another kid who gets B's, not so much. How to be dysfunctional. Favor others based on their performance. Or what about this one? How to be dysfunctional? Work your schemes to improve your performance. You've got a job, and there's one thing you can do to get a little bit higher on that ladder, but it's slightly unethical. It involves putting a little bit of a chemical in someone else's food. That's dysfunctional. Don't do it. But if you want to be dysfunctional, by all means, just go for it. But how to be extraordinary is this. I'm encouraging you to be a person of the promise. And this is tough. Because, see, God says that our performance does not matter as much as His promise. But that doesn't mean that then we can simply ignore the life He's asked us to live. This is where it gets complicated, because we have to be people who say, God's promises are more important to me than my performance. So we have to know, what has He promised to me? And we have to know, how do I actually live? And frankly, I don't have enough time today to give you all those answers, so you're going to have to go to one of the life groups this week and discuss it. We're going to do a little bit of a discussion in some of the Digging Deeper groups about how this plays out. But I'm going to try to just give you a little bit this morning, just as we close. When I was in high school, I realized that we do this whole principle backwards. I realized that we put a far greater emphasis on performance than on any other promise. As a freshman, I was on the varsity basketball team. I wasn't a starter, but I was the first point guard off the bench. And so, about halfway through the second quarter, I would come in and I'd get a chance to play a little bit, point guard. And sometimes they would even bring me in earlier than that or later on than that to be the